Hello everyone and welcome to Now Showing. I'm your host Abhijit Bhatt. फिल्म चक दे इंडिया में शाहरुख खान ने कहा था 70 मिनट्स है तुम्हारे पास। हाँ, अब उनके पास भले ही 70 मिनट्स हो, मगर अफसोस हमारे पास 70 नहीं सिर्फ 30 मिनट्स होते हैं। But within these 30 minutes, we try our level best to satiate the cinephile within you. क्योंकि मूवीज और नाउ शोइंग की जोड़ी ऐसी जैसे पेट्रोल और कार, जैसे मूली और डकार, जैसे सूरज बड़जात्या की मूवीज और संस्कार। So without further delay, let's take a look at what's coming up on this week's edition of Now Showing. John Abraham playing a diplomat who rescues an Indian girl in Pakistan in The Diplomat is our recommendation for your weekend home viewing. Also highly recommended is Nonnas, a heartwarming story about food, friendship and family love. Ishaan Khatter and Bhumi Pednekar talk about their new show, The Royals, their favorite Bollywood love stories, and why some men still feel threatened by independent women. Nawazuddin Siddiqui opens up about his creative process and reveals why portraying Balasaheb Thackeray on screen was the toughest role of his career. All right, now let's start the show with this week's hottest releases and recommendations. You know, on an average, young adults spend a total of 3 hours on the internet every day searching for something good to watch. Okay, fine, that's a lie, don't believe it. But you can totally believe our entertainment and lifestyle editor Tavishi Paitandy as she guides you to your weekly dose of dhamakedar entertainment. Over to you, Tavishi.
In a time of renewed tension between India and Pakistan, if there is one film you need to watch this week, not just as a viewer, but as a citizen, it's The Diplomat on Netflix. This John Abraham starrer isn't fiction. It's a true story, one that showcases India's resolve, restraint, and compassion, even in the most complex geopolitical situations. John plays J.P. Singh, a seasoned Indian diplomat, currently India's ambassador to Israel. But the film takes us back to 2017 when Singh was serving as the Deputy High Commissioner in Islamabad. That year, an Indian woman named Uzma Ahmed crossed into Pakistan and found herself trapped. A supposed romance turned into a nightmare. Deception, a forced marriage, and repeated physical and sexual abuse, all at the hands of a Pakistani national, Tahir Ali. Somehow, Uzma reached the Indian High Commission, pleading for a safe place and a road back to her home, India. And that is where J.P. Singh stepped in, offering her not just shelter, but a lifeline. What followed was a tense, behind-the-scenes diplomatic operation. Singh had to walk a tightrope, ensuring Uzma's safe return while not derailing India's already fragile relations with Pakistan. He succeeded with quiet courage, tactical finesse, and full backing from New Delhi. Then External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj stood firmly behind the mission. It wasn't just about one individual. It was about a national stand to protect an Indian life with dignity and without compromise. The Diplomat is an important viewing because it tells us what diplomacy really looks like. It's not about headlines. It's about pressure, precision, patience, and protecting people, not with noise, but with action. The story also tells us something very fundamental about India. Even in the face of provocation, this country chooses grace. Even in conflict, it upholds humanitarian values. J.P. Singh's story reflects a larger truth that India's strength lies not just in military or might, but in the way it handles the most delicate crisis, with heart and resolve. So watch The Diplomat, not just as a film, but as a reminder of how India shows up for its citizens, even in the toughest of neighborhoods. It's a story of diplomacy done right, of bureaucracy that works, and of a nation that always stands up for its own. Speaking of warmth and home, last couple of days, for some odd reason, I have been doing what I don't do very often, spending some quality time in my kitchen. There's a kind of quiet magic that lives in the kitchens, no? The sizzle of spices, the clang of steel vessels, and that gentle rhythm of something slowly simmering. Sometimes it reminds you of laughter, of affectionate scoldings, of emotions on the brink of a spillover, of childhood stories told over boiling pots, but above all, of love. Netflix's Nonas is exactly that kind of magic and more. Now, Nonna in Italian means the grandmother. But much like our dadis and nannies, a Nonna is never just a grandmother. She's a memory keeper, a healer, a quiet force of nature who can calm heartbreak with a bowl of soup, silence even the fiercest mother with one side eye, and instinctively knows that exact taste that soothes both your stomach and your nerves. Directed by Stephen Chbosky, Nonas brings this truth to life beautifully. So beautifully that you can almost smell the tomato sauce bubbling on screen. It's a film about what we inherit, who we become, and the women who hold entire histories, one recipe at a time. At the heart of the story is Joe, played with gentle honesty by Vaughn. He's mourning the loss of his mother, and with her, the taste of her food, the sound of her voice, and the simple comfort of knowing where he came from. In his grief, Joe opens a restaurant. But what begins as a tribute turns into something much deeper, as he starts inviting Nonas from across New York City to cook in the kitchen, to share dishes from their own cultures, to help others rediscover what's been lost, or perhaps long missed. And it's in that slightly cramped, chaotic, deeply alive kitchen that the soul of the film truly shines. These Nonas, they are not polished, perfect angels. They bicker, they throw air punches, they curse in 3 languages. They argue over sauce timings and who's playing the worst music. But in between all that, there's something very tender. The way one kneads the dough or tastes a sauce with her eyes closed, it's more than cooking. It's all storytelling. Legends like Lorraine Bracco, Talia Shire, Brenda Vaccaro, and Susan Sarandon light up the screen with warmth, wit, and a spark only experience can bring. Nonas is more than a food film. It's a reminder that history often lives in kitchens, in handwritten recipes stained with oil and time. And that cooking for someone, truly feeding someone, is one of the most loving, selfless things any human being can do. It's a film that doesn't just stay with you, it lingers. Like the memory of a meal from your childhood. The kind you can't really describe, you just feel, you smell. So if you're in a mood for something heartfelt, deeply flavorful, and quietly powerful, Nonas on Netflix is a must-watch. Trust me, it's a story you don't just watch, you taste it. Last, but definitely not the least, if you are done with your chill-at-home pill, strap in, because Ethan Hunt is back for one last mission. Mission Impossible, the final reckoning, hit theaters this weekend, and it's a wild, edge-of-your-seat ride you really don't want to miss. Tom Cruise, the man who runs like the wind and fights like a legend, delivers one of his most daring performances yet. We are talking death-defying stunts, pulse-pounding action, and that signature MI tension that keeps you guessing till the last second. This isn't just another sequel. It's the final chapter of a franchise that redefined action cinema. From vault heists to helicopter chases, the Mission Impossible saga has done it all, and done it bigger, bolder, and better. So if you are craving blockbuster thrills, heart-stopping suspense, and one last impossible mission, this is your call to action. Catch it on the biggest screen you can. Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning, your mission is to watch it. Accepted?
Thank you so much, Tavishi, for those recommendations. And moving on, if you watch a romantic comedy sitting on your couch, will it be called a sitcom? Just kidding. But if you are a fan of romantic comedies, then you won't want to miss Netflix's The Royals. And up next, we have the stars of the show, Ishaan Khatter and Bhumi Pednekar, in conversation with my colleague Titash Chaudhary about the show's comparisons with Bridgerton, their favorite Bollywood love stories, and why women with agency still seem to intimidate some men. Check it out.
We were, of course, talking about love stories. I heard you, on-screen love stories, that is. The examples that you came up with, of course, are the OGs. You know, you said Kal Ho Na Ho, you said Jab We Met. But growing up, can you think of one love story that you watched on the big screen and it sort of gave you some kind of dreams, you know, that growing up, I think I would want this for myself?
You know, weirdly,
Yeah.
when I watched Khoobsurat,
Yeah.
you know, and I remember when I Khoobsurat dekhi, I was like, you know, it'll be fun to do something like so. And after all those years comes Royals. I feel like the worlds are similar. Yeah.
You're talking about the Sonam Kapoor.
Yes,
part. Yeah, okay.
yes. Which I
Love
really
story.
had
It
fun
is.
watching.
For me, I think it's any time Shah Rukh Khan falls in love. Like,
Yeah, I know,
I
right,
want to
I
fall in
know.
love like that. And
Shiddat wala.
then Jab We Met, yeah. That
Of
really
course,
did.
yeah, of
Because there was
course.
something about the two characters like becoming each other
Yeah.
and then completing each other, which was really beautiful.
Yeah.
So,
But lucky you get to see Aditya Kashyap on the big screen and then at home also.
can you believe it?
Yeah, we're very lucky and we're very jealous of you.
Yeah. He was a lot of Kashyap in real life also. And
sweet.
I mean, I have to say, I think like that was the first time that maybe, that was also around the time where I started watching films with maybe slightly more discerning eye.
Sure.
I was always passionate about it, so it started a little earlier for me.
Huh.
But that was maybe the first time that I started seeing like characters in earlier what I would see my brother. You know, so it was very interesting because very different from you know,
Nice.
who he was.
But you know, like we see in the show, your characters are like poles apart, you know, in so many ways. Do you really think opposites attract?
Yeah, of course. I mean, if we have evidence of it, you know, plus minus, it's you know, I've experienced it in my life actually. Yeah. I was in a relationship that started with a fight. Yeah,
Really?
like, and it
That's
was
so
one of those.
filmy.
Yeah, it was like it was a high school romance,
Uh-huh.
and it was that first love, like, you know, everything is over when
Right.
you know, kind of thing. But yeah, it was a sweet 16 romance that started with us like literally like insulting each other and having a fight in front of the whole classroom and a debate, and then it was like cute though.
And then Cupid struck.
And then Cupid struck. So
Yeah,
you know,
I
it's
feel like
what
if you can't stand each other, you're still on each other's mind, right? So that says a lot
That is true.
in a very non-toxic way.
Of course. That's very
I just want to put
important.
that disclaimer out. Otherwise, it can be creepy.
yeah, hate is a strong emotion, but it's a thin line.
Yeah.
That's correct. That's true. You know, I saw a few comments on YouTube under the trailer that, you know, this look gives Desi Bridgerton vibes, you know, which is great. I mean, we all love Bridgerton. But, you know, I think even when it comes to Bridgerton, and I have seen your show as well, you know, the interesting thing is that all the women, they have agency. And it's so cool and it's so good to see that. Of course, you know, these things become eventually a part of the pop culture.
Absolutely.
But do you think it's somewhere, of course, pushes that narrative through this pop culture, these pop culture references also, that women need to really retain their identity even when they are in a relationship.
100%. And I think that is one of the most prominent themes for Sophia's arc in the show, that she is constantly battling the fact that if I have like this external energy come into my life that I'm so deeply attracted to, am I going to be unfair towards this beautiful thing that I've built? And I feel like with a lot of modern working women, that's a very big conflict in all of our lives. That's why I felt like such a deep connect with Sophia, because even when I speak to my friends or other women that where their careers are very demanding and that are pressure junkies. I'm a pressure junkie. I can work 24/7, right? And you feel guilty about kind of not being fair to your work. But the thing is that you should be able to find that beautiful balance where you can do both. But that can only happen when you have a partner that respects that, and vice versa.
Very true.
And I think the show beautifully comments on that. There are such beautiful micro themes in there. It's so refreshing to have like writing that doesn't judge your characters, you know, where women are not judged. Okay, you want to find love at a certain age, please. We are going to champion you through that. You know, you want to find love in a more non-traditional way. I don't want to give a lot out, so I'm just like carefully choosing my words. Okay, you know, you're going to find representation in Royals with all the fun and all the fluff and the beauty and the sexiness and the clothes and the glamour. The core of it is so sensitive and beautiful.
Absolutely. But Ishaan, you know, I want to know from a man's perspective, of course, see, how do men really look at women with an agency? Do you think it could threaten them?
I think we've seen over the years, I think we've seen that it typically does, you know, and
Yeah.
as much as like men like to say that we're comfortable and stuff like that, the second it starts becoming a conversation, you start seeing the, you know,
Very true.
you know,
Which is why I
it's a bit
asked you.
thorny. In my case, I was raised by a single mother. So all I've known is a woman with agency who's like, you know, who I've seen single-handedly balance careers, bring the bread, but also raise her two boys. And I think what's beautiful about this show is that it's not about like this sort of pseudo-feministic notion, if I may say so, of like this aggressive need for, you know, women to sort of overpower. It's just is being able to see the two as equals and as flesh and blood human beings beyond the, you know, the exterior. And what I think is really interesting is that Aviraj, also being at a certain stage in his life and having seen the life that he has, finds almost finds comfort in her go-getter attitude. You know, and he
so
finds,
refreshing
like, I
and
think it's so interesting because you know, there's this burden of responsibility that he knows it's like a mountain he knows he needs to climb, that he has ahead of him, and he's it's not like he's you know, shying away from it. After a certain stage, you see he takes it head on, but I think he also finds inspiration in a partner who is able to create a life for herself from scratch, and which is something that he was never, that's not an experience that he was ever allowed to have even.
Absolutely.
You know, so I think, I just think it's really beautiful to have women and men that written as flesh and blood human beings beyond just,
Absolutely.
you know.
Very true.
All right, quick question. If you talk to Nawazuddin Siddiqui at night, will he become Nawazu Raj Siddiqui? Well, my jokes might be bad, agreed. But Nawaz's acting skills never fail to impress. Fresh off another standout role in Kostau, Nawazuddin says he's now more selective about the projects he wants to be a part of. However, he remained tight-lipped when asked about the Bajrangi Bhaijaan sequel. In this interview with my colleague Vishal Chatkara, Nawaz explains how he gets under the skin of a role and reveals the most challenging character he has portrayed in his over 2-decade-long film journey. Take a look.
Nawaz bhai, your film is of course based on the life of Costa Fernandez, who was a brave custom officer. कौन सी वो चीज़ें हैं that help you to get into a character? चाहे accent हो, costume हो या कोई prop हो.
किरदार के दायरे में जो चीज़ें आती हैं वहाँ तक जो अब मेरे किरदार को इन्हांस करे कोई भी चीज़, तो ऑफ कोर्स करनी चाहिए वो, क्योंकि वो एक मौका होता है वो आपके सामने जब आप उसको लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल जैसे कोई भी ऐसी एक्सरसाइज समझ में आ रही है कि जिस एक्सरसाइज की हेल्प से मैं अपने किरदार को एनहांस कर सकता हूँ, तो वो सारी चीज़ें करता हूँ।
क्या किया, चेहरे पे पेंट लगाया हो या
नहीं ऐसा तो नहीं, ये मतलब ये मेथड एक्टिंग के दायरे में भी नहीं आता। ये बहुत ही ये मूड प्ले करने वाली बात हो जाती है कि और मूड नहीं प्ले करना चाहिए, क्योंकि एक अवेयरनेस भी रहनी चाहिए कि भाई मैं नवाज भी हूँ, एट द सेम टाइम ऑफ कोर्स मैं कोस्ताव का एक इम्प्रेशन दे सकता हूँ, बट एट द सेम टाइम मैं नवाज की झलक भी दिखेगी उसमें।
नवाज भाई कहते हैं कि व्हाट यू आर हाइडिंग फ्रॉम द वर्ल्ड दैट इज़ द रियल पर्सन यू आर। जो आप दुनिया से छुपाते हैं वो आप असली इंसान होते हैं। इस किरदार को प्ले करते हुए व्हाट वाज दैट सीड जो आपको लगा कि ये है कॉस्टो की असली आइडेंटिटी जो मेरे को ऑडियंसेस को बतानी है, और वो सामने आती है जब वो अपनी लाइफ में चैलेंजेस फेस करता है, चाहे डोमेस्टिक फ्रंट पे हो या प्रोफेशनल फ्रंट पे?
ये बहुत अच्छा सवाल है आपका, क्योंकि बहुत सारी चीज़ें ऐसी हैं। हो सकता है कोस्ता की ऐसी पर्सनैलिटी होती है कि वो अपने इमोशंस जाहिर कर देता, बट एक क्रूशल सीन है इसमें ग्रेवयार्ड वाला, वहाँ पे जिसमें खुद से बात ग्रेवयार्ड के सामने बैठ के बात करता है। मैं भी शायद वहाँ पे स्लिप होना बहुत आसान होता है एक्टर के लिए, बट वहाँ से अपने आप को रोकना कि ही वांट्स टू बी लाइक वो शायद वो फूट के रोना चाह रहा है, बट वहाँ पे उसने अपने आप को कंट्रोल करके रखा, क्योंकि वो सफरिंग जो उसने पूरे थ्रू आउट देखी उन्होंने कोस्ता ने अपनी लाइफ में, वो एक सीन था जहाँ वो कैथारसिस कर सकते थे, बट वहाँ पे भी उसने अपने आप को रोक के रखा। तो वहाँ पता चलता है कि उनके खुद के इमोशन से भी ज़्यादा उनकी जो ज़ील है उनकी जीने की और आर्गूमेंट करने की, वो बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट थी इनकी।
फिल्म में एक लाइन है, सोसाइटी में सबको चाहिए कि ऑफिसर ऑनेस्ट हो, ब्रेव हो, लेकिन घर पर नहीं। कितना रिलेट करते हैं आप इस लाइन से अपनी पर्सनल लाइफ में?
ऑफ कोर्स मैं लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल जैसे इवन मैं तो ये कहता हूँ कि हमारे देश में हर आदमी को फैमिली में एक मेंबर को आर्मी में ज़रूर जाना चाहिए। जैसे बाकी कंट्री में भी होता है कि सब जाते हैं तो जाना चाहिए, तो ताकि पता चले कि कितनी हार्डशिप होती है वहाँ पे, कितना और एक डिसिप्लिन होता है वहाँ पे। तो बट हम सोचते हैं ना कि नहीं कि जितने भी ये डिफ़िकल्ट जॉब हैं, जितने भी वो नहीं करने हैं, हमें थोड़ा सा आराम तलब वाला जॉब करना है। बट मुझे लगता है कि हमें हम लोगों को कम से कम 2-2 साल की ट्रेनिंग जो है ना आर्मी की होनी चाहिए।
मगर क्या आप इस ऑनेस्टी को अपनी लाइफ में देखते हैं कि यू आर अ डिफरेंट नवाजुद्दीन सिद्दीकी एट होम एंड अ डिफरेंट एट द वर्क फ्रंट?
ऑफ कोर्स हर जगह मतलब आदमी एक ही होता है, उसके रूप अलग अलग होते हैं, तो हर जगह जिस तरीके का माहौल होता है वैसे अपने आप को अडॉप्ट करना बहुत ज़रूरी होता है।
You've been playing many characters. How do you recharge your batteries? Like, how do you observe people dialects or mannerism? क्या आप ऑब्जर्व करते हैं जब आप ट्रैवल करते हैं?
ऑफकोर्स हमें शुरू से आदत पड़ी हुई, इवन जब हम लोग ट्रेनिंग भी ले रहे थे एक्टिंग की, उस वक्त से आदत पड़ी हुई है कि अगर किसी आदमी में कुछ यूनिक चीज़ मिलती है तो उसको बहुत जल्दी स्ट्राइक करता है वो। तो कहीं ना कहीं अब जैसे आप भी बैठे हैं तो कहने का एट द सेम टाइम मेरे दिमाग में भी चल रहा है कि अगर मैं आपकी जगह मतलब होता तो मैं अगर आपका रोल करने के लिए मुझे मिल जाता तो किस तरीके से मैं करता। तो वो होता है, वो एक्टर की एक हैबिट होती है।
हालांकि आपने कई मेमोरेबल किरदार प्ले किए हैं इन द पास्ट, चाहे वो ठाकरे हो, सादत हसन मंतो हो। आई नो इट्स डिफिकल्ट टू पिक वन कैरेक्टर, बट कोई ऐसा कैरेक्टर है जिसको प्ले करने में टू गेट इनटू दैट कैरेक्टर यू पुट लॉट ऑफ एफर्ट्स, और वो आपके साथ काफ़ी समय तक आपके साथ रहा और उसे बाहर निकलने में बहुत समय लगा?
कई कैरेक्टर है, जैसे रमन राघव का कैरेक्टर रहा, मंटो का रहा है कैरेक्टर, ठाकरे का कैरेक्टर एक्चुअली मेरे लिए सबसे डिफ़िकल्ट कैरेक्टर था, क्योंकि मैं कॉपी नहीं कर सकता था तो जैसे होता है वो बहुत ही कैरिकेचरिस्ट हो जाता है, वो कॉपी करना। मैंने ये डिसाइड किया था कि मैं कॉपी नहीं होनी चाहिए बिल्कुल भी। जो उनका थॉट है, जो उनका, और लगने भी चाहिए ठाकरे है, और कहीं ना कहीं नवाज़ का भी इनपुट होना चाहिए उसमें, है ना। तो बायोपिक करना हमारे लिए थोड़ा सा डिफ़िकल्ट, बहुत रिस्की लाइन है, क्योंकि अगर थोड़ा सा इधर गए तो कुएं में और इधर गए तो खाई में गिरे, इस तरह का होता है। तो लगे भी ठाकरे है, और उसमें मेरा खुद भी हो, नवाज भी लगे उसमें, तो उसको करने में बहुत डिफ़िकल्टीज हुई थी।
पहले हम देखते थे हर 2 महीने में नवाजुद्दीन सिद्दीकी की एक फिल्म, एक सीरीज आती थी। अब नाउ यू बिकम वेरी सिलेक्टिव।
कुछ अच्छा करने की ही वो है, भले ही कम हो लेकिन अच्छा हो, कुछ इंटरेस्टिंग हो तो ही मज़ा है।
गर्मी में बर्फ का गोला पिघल जाता है, ये वक्त भी कैसे निकल जाता है। Yes, with a heavy heart, I must tell you that we have now come to the end of another episode of Now Showing. But, we'll see you at the same time next week with more reviews and recommendations. Until then, this is me, Abhijit Bhatt, saying goodbye and thank you for watching. Stay filmy, stay fabulous.